The Word of God says, do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in them. Wait, what? Do not love the world or anything in the world? If anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in them? Wow. Maybe you're here thinking, but I love baseball. I love playoff baseball. Maybe not 15 innings of playoff baseball, but I like baseball. I love playoff baseball. Maybe you're thinking, I love America. Or I love warm chocolate brownies with ice cream on top. Maybe you're thinking, I love my phone. I love Lake Michigan. Do not love anything in the world. If you do, the love of God is not in you. Because I love those things, does that mean something's wrong? Well, this morning we have an important but difficult text to work our way through. So let me invite you to take a Bible and turn to the book of 1 John chapter 2. 1 John chapter 2. It's page 986 in the church Bibles. Those are the Bibles in the rack in front of you. If you don't have a Bible with you, we would love for you to use one of those Bibles. 1 John chapter 2, page 986. I'm going to read verses 15, 16, and 17 to us. 1 John 2, verses 15 through 17. The Holy Spirit says through the Apostle John, do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in them. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, comes not from the Father, but from the world. The world and its desires pass away, but whoever does the will of God lives forever. Now, the most important thing for understanding what this passage is saying is recognizing that the New Testament uses the word world with at least two different references. One reference for the word world in the New Testament is everything that's been created by God. So everything that exists in existence, everything that God has created, the Bible sometimes refers to that as the world. For example, in 1 Timothy chapter 6, the Apostle Paul writes, for we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. Paul's talking about the created world, the earth, life, existence. When we were born, we brought nothing into this life, and when we die, we don't get to take anything out of this life. This word world there means existence, creation, everything that God has made. Likewise, 1 Corinthians chapter 5. Paul there says, I wrote to you in my letter not to associate with sexually immoral people. Not at all meaning the people of this world who are immoral, or the greedy and swindlers or idolaters. In that case, you would have to leave this world. Some people are like, well, maybe I shouldn't be hanging out with non-Christians who are engaged in activities that I don't agree with. Paul's like, well, that's not even possible. If you wanted to do that, you would have to leave the earth. You would have to leave the created world. Again, same idea, same reference, is that sometimes when the New Testament uses the word world, it means everything that's been created by God. You, me, the planet, trees, everything that God has created, everything that exists. Now, to represent this reference for the word world, I have up here a bowl of apples. Those apples are from West Michigan, a farm here in West Michigan. They're created by God. Apples are created by God. And so we're just going to let that stand for when we're talking about the word world, which means the things that God has created. God created apples, God created trees, God created Lake Michigan. That stands for the things of this world created by God, everything in existence. So that's one way that the New Testament uses the word world. There is a second way, and this is to refer not to everything in existence, but specifically to the technologies, the structures, the cultures, the governments, the inventions, the things of this world that we as humans have had some hand in. The idea is not only does God create things, we also create things as well. A couple of passages that show how this word world is used, or how the word world is used that way. James 1:27, religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by what? By the world. Apples don't pollute anybody. Trees don't pollute people. Other Christians don't pollute. This is not talking about everything that's in creation. It's talking about within creation there are technologies, systems, governments, cultures, these sorts of things that are part of the world that we've created. That's where corruption comes from. Likewise, John chapter 15. John, who is the author of our passage that we're looking at this morning, also wrote a gospel. And in that gospel, John says it this way. Now, this is actually Jesus speaking, and John is writing it down. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belong to the world, you would love it. It would love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you. Again, if you're a Christian, these apples don't hate you. Trees don't hate you. Lake Michigan doesn't hate you. This is not talking about everything in creation. It's talking about the fact that the systems of this world, those systems, the technologies, the parts of the world that is tainted by our human fallenness as sinful human beings, the world hates Christians. And when Jesus says, I've called you out of the world, he's not saying he's called us out of planet Earth. He's saying he's called us out of the systems of this world. One more really important example, because it's in the very letter that we're looking at. Turn over to 1 John chapter 5. So just turn a page over. Right to the end of our letter. Verse 19. John writes, we know that we are children of God, and that the whole world is under the control of the evil one. Is the Apostle John under the control of the evil one? No. Is the writing of 1 John, was this under the control of the evil one? No. Is this church under the control of the evil one? No, it's under Jesus' control. In fact, the passage we just looked at last week says that we as Christians have overcome the evil one. In this passage, John is not talking about everything in the created world. He's talking about the systems, the cultures, the governments, the technologies, the things of this world that we as sinful humans have had a hand in creating. Because we're made in the image of God, not only does God create, we also create. But the difference is God is without sin, and we as humans are fallen. And so our sinful nature and sinful background taints everything that we've created. And what John is saying is the systems of this world, because of our sinful nature, are actually under the control of the evil one. So to represent this referent of what the word world means, I have a bag of Skittles. Skittles are created by humans. Now, ultimately, everything is from God. But apples are kind of created by God directly. Skittles are what we came up with. And again, the idea is because we're made in the image of God, we create things. But as opposed to God, the things that we create are touched by our human nature, our sinful human nature. And as a result, although they are good and can be used for good, the things that we've created are a part of this world and susceptible to Satan's control. So we go back to 1 John chapter 2. When John says, do not love the world or anything in the world, he's not talking about apples. He's not talking about trees. He's not talking about Lake Michigan. He's not talking about loving another Christian. He's not talking about loving your dog. Those are all part of the created world, created by God. That's not what John is talking about. You should love apples. They're great. You should love Lake Michigan. It's beautiful. You should love your brother and sister in Christ. We're commanded to do that. So when John says don't love the world, he's not talking about this word, world. He's talking about this. He's talking about the systems and the things in this world created by sinful humanity. The technologies, the inventions, the systems, the cultures, these things, John is saying, don't love those systems and don't love the stuff that the systems have produced. Skittles is produced by Mars Wrigley. Interestingly, Mars Wrigley was in the news just about a year ago because they got sued by 8 former child slaves from Africa who sued Mars Wrigley and some other food companies, saying they knowingly participated in the enslavement of children in the production of their foods. Now, I don't actually know what happened. The U.S. Supreme Court dismissed this case, not because there was no merit, but because the 8 former children, were not U.S. citizens, and so they had no standing. I don't know what happened in Africa, but the idea is that Mars Wrigley, they're the ones who designed, market, produce, distribute Skittles, and they represent this world. And what John is saying is don't love the world or the things in the world. Now, please, John's not saying you shouldn't like Skittles. John's not saying you shouldn't eat Skittles. John's not saying there's nothing good about Skittles. Skittles were created by humans, and humans are made in the image of God. There is something good in all the stuff that we create. But John is saying we should not love Skittles. Now, you're probably here and you're thinking, yeah, I don't really love Skittles. That's fine. I'm good. Let's go. But let me give you a few other examples just to kind of show the difference between world of what God created and then world when the New Testament talks about the stuff we've sort of added to it. So we would say God created apples. We invented Skittles. God created human-to-human interaction. We invented social media. God created marriage and singleness. We came up with Love is Blind. God created government. The idea of government is created by God. We came up with voting. Again, there's nothing wrong with voting. It wasn't created by God. It was created by humans. God created music. We invented recording studios. God created stories, like the one Moses told us this morning. We created Hollywood. God created generosity. We invented the stock market. God is the one who actually creates clothing. We have God making clothing in Genesis chapter 3. We're the ones who came up with fashion. God created exercise. We came up with pickleball. Now, please hear me very carefully. The things that you see on your right, we are not saying those are bad things. We're not saying that somehow voting is bad. It's good. It's good to be able to vote. We're not saying Skittles is bad. We're not saying recording studios are bad. I'm not saying that, and John is not saying that. Social media. No one is saying you shouldn't be on social media. And no one is saying you shouldn't play pickleball. But John's point is, don't love those things. When he says, do not love the world, he's not talking about your dog, or Lake Michigan, or your brother or sister in Christ, or these apples. That's not the word world he's using here. He's saying, don't love Skittles. Don't love social media. Don't love is blind. Don't love recording studios or the music that comes out of recording studios. Again, he's not saying don't use them. He's not saying don't enjoy them. God tells us in 1 Timothy that everything, including Skittles, have been given for our enjoyment. But this passage is saying, don't love them. Why not? Well, there's 3 reasons in our passage why we don't want to love these things of the world. Number 1, verse 15, if anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in them. Why do we not want to love the things that humans have created? Well, the first reason is it pushes out love for God. How can I explain this? Let me give you a sort of a thought experiment. If I were to say to you, this is the second service, so someone came up to me after the first service, like, can I eat that stuff? I was like, well, I need it for the second service. I did give her an apple, though. She got an apple. But if I said to you, hey, you can come up after the service, and you can eat both the apples and the Skittles, which of the 2 would you eat first? Most people would choose the apples. Because after you eat the Skittles, what will the apples taste like? They're going to taste pretty gross. That's what John's talking about. Love for the things of this world spoil our tastes for God. Because this is what God thinks sweet ought to look like. This is what we think sweet ought to look like. And when we eat these, it ruins us for these. Likewise, TikTok is how we think we ought to receive information. Short, randomized, bite-sized, entertaining videos. Nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying that's what humans created. But it shouldn't be surprising if you show up to church and be like, man, why is that guy still talking? Because God did not design us to hear from him in short, bite-sized, randomized videos. That's not what he came up with. The problem is the more we love TikTok, I'm not saying you shouldn't use it, but the more we love it, the less we love God and the way he does things. You ever wonder why prayer just isn't more attractive to you or to others? I mean, prayer is this most amazing thing. Why don't we love praying? Well, one of the reasons why we might not like it as much as we ought to is if you spend any time playing video games, it ruins you for prayer. What do I mean? Well, in video games, whenever you tell the phone or the controller to do something, guess what? It does it. That's not how prayer works. And we're used to getting a response immediately. I pressed the button. Why didn't he jump? Well, we come to God and we're like, I'm praying. Why aren't you doing something? This is the first reason why John says, don't love the things of this world, because the things of this world were designed in such a way to ruin us for God. Not saying don't use them. Not saying don't enjoy them. I'm just saying the more we love them, the more it messes up our taste for God. Second reason, verse 16. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life comes not from the Father, but from the world. The second reason why we don't want to love the things of the world is they activate bad stuff in us. Again, let me ask you this question. Do not raise your hand, please. How many of you know someone, maybe it's the person in your seat, or the person next to you, who has a bit of an addiction to Skittles or other candy or chocolate? Please don't raise your hand, and please don't point at anybody. But can you think of anybody for whom they might have an unhealthy attraction to candy or chocolate? Okay. Also, don't raise your hand, although I don't think there'll be anybody in here to do this. But how many of you know someone who is addicted to apples? Like all they talk about is apples. They can't get enough apples. They want apples all the time. Yeah, we don't know as many people addicted to apples as we do addicted to candy. That's because Mars Wrigley designed, do you see the packaging? Do you see how attractive this is? The colors? It's made with refined and processed sugars which are designed to make us want more of them. This is what John is saying, is the world activates in us the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes. You look at this and you go, well, if these are my two choices, I'm choosing this one. That's the lust of the eyes. When you eat them, you're like, man, I want more of that sugar. That's the lust of the flesh. This is what John's saying, is if you love the things of the world, look, the things of this world were designed by fallen human beings and used by Satan to activate stuff in our flesh that we don't really want activated. When the stock market goes through the roof, guess what? We all think we're financial geniuses. That's the pride of life. When the stock market crashes, guess what? We all think we're fools. That also is the pride of life. We're focused on these things. They create in us these desires, the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, the pride of life. And John says the reason why you don't want to love the things of this world, you want to be able to use them and you want to be able to enjoy them, but you don't want to love them, because when you love them, that activates stuff in us we don't want activated. Third reason why we don't want to love the things of this world. Verse 17, the world and its desires pass away, but whoever does the will of God lives forever. The reason we don't want to love the things of this world is they're fading away. When I was younger, I loved G.I. Joes. Loved them. Had as many as you could collect. I had them. I kept all the little information cards. I played with them all the time. I loved them so much that I decided at a young age, if I ever have children, I'm going to save my G.I. Joes to give to my children as an expression of my love to them, including my most prized possession, which was the G.I. Joe headquarters in its original box. Guess what? Nobody wants them. I don't want them. I don't want to play with them. All that time, all that energy, this is what John is saying is, look, it fades away. When I was laying out this sermon series, so back in February, March, Pete Davidson was in the news because he was spending hundreds of thousands of dollars getting tattoos removed. And I think to myself, I bet when he got the tattoos, he loved them. And then at some point, he didn't want the tattoos anymore. And he spent more money getting rid of the tattoos than he did getting the tattoos. That's what John's saying, is the stuff of this world will fade away. Moses didn't get up here and share his story about whatever toys he had when he was a little kid. That's not the stuff that lasts forever. That's the stuff of what God did in his life and what he was able to do in connection with God's working in his life. Well, this raises the all-important question. We don't want to love the things of the world because they crowd out love for God, because they activate bad stuff in us, because they're fading away. But the all-important question is, how do I know if I love the things of this world? How do I know if my affections for the stock market, or my affections for social media, or my affections for pickleball, or my enjoyment of Skittles has crossed the line into what John is talking about here? That's actually a pretty tough question to answer. But let me give you sort of 5 suggestions that might help us as we think through this in our own lives. Number 1, ask the Lord to highlight anything in your life that you might have too strong a love for. See, I'm pretty sure that nobody walked in here this morning thinking, man, I have an unhealthy love for Skittles. I hope the sermon is about Skittles this morning. We don't think those things. We don't think, oh, no, I'm way too in love with the stuff of this world. But ultimately, we're talking about a relationship with Jesus. He's a person. And just like I might say to somebody who I love, hey, look, I don't feel like you're showing me much love in return. I feel like you're distracted and you're busy with all these other things. We want to ask Jesus, hey, is there anything in my life, is there anything in your life that you probably love too much, that's pushing out time and love for him? Number 2, ask someone who loves you if there's anything in your life that you might have too strong a love for. We're not very good at identifying the things in our life that we have an unhealthy attraction to, but other people in our lives who love us usually are. Now, the encouragement is, ask a friend. Ask someone in your small group. Ask your spouse. Ask someone in your Sunday school class. Ask somebody you're having lunch with this week, hey, you know me pretty well. Is there anything in my life that you think from this world? So again, we're not talking about if you're really dedicated to helping the poor. We're not talking about the fact that if you really love doing ministry. We're not talking about those things. We're talking about social media. We're talking about pickleball. We're talking about the stock market. We're talking about Skittles. We're talking about politics. We're talking about the things in your life that you might love too much, part of this created world. Ask them, hey, you know me, is there anything? And then don't argue with them. Don't tell them they don't know what they're talking about. Don't tell them, oh, but you don't know what I'm really doing. Just listen. If somebody loves you enough to honestly answer that question, then realize there probably is something in your life that has a stronger hold than you wished that it would. And please don't punish them for being honest enough to share it with you. Because it's not ultimately them telling you, it's Jesus. And as much as we want to tell Jesus he doesn't know what he's talking about, as much as we want to tell Jesus this is not really a problem, as much as we want to tell Jesus, no, I'm good. At the end of the day, we want to know if there's anything in our life that we love more than Jesus. Number 3, how much time do you spend thinking about or doing the things you love? You can take out your phone and you can look. A lot of times it will track how much time you've spent on that phone. And you can say, you know, the funny thing about phones is we're absolutely convinced that anybody who uses their phones less than we do is some crazy monk type person. And anybody who uses their phones more than we do, well, that's unhealthy. None of us think we're using it too much. And the question is, it's a pretty easy comparison. You can pull out your phone and you go, okay, that's about the amount of time Now I get it. You're going to say, well, I needed it for directions, or I was listening to music, or I was listening to this very important podcast. I get all of that stuff. But it can be helpful to say, how much time are you spending on the phone versus how much time you're spending with Jesus? It's a pretty simple comparison to just try to say, look, maybe there's something here we love too much. How much time are we spending thinking and talking about politics? Now again, God created government. But the political systems and all of the things that are happening in politics, that's us. They can be used for good. They can even be part of the enjoyment we have in this world. But it is possible to love them too much. And Jesus says one of the ways to know is how much time are you spending on these things? Number 4. What happens when the thing you love is taken away? If you're like, yeah, no, I don't love investments. Well, how do you feel when the investments go way down? Are you like, yeah, that's fine? Or does it activate something in you to say, uh-oh, there might be a love for money there? What happens if you don't get to watch your favorite college football team or professional football team play a game? Have you ever considered skipping time with friends because the latest episode of The Summer I Turned Pretty came out, or Love is Blind came out? Are you like, I can't believe that's during the time I want to go do this? What if you get injured and aren't able to play sports or piano or whatever the thing might be? It can be a sign that perhaps this thing has a stronger hold on our affections than we might wish. And then 5th and finally, and this is not maybe the most important point, but the point I think I'd like to emphasize the most. How can you seek to do the will of God more and more? What I mean by this is in 1 John 2, it says, the world and its desires pass away, but whoever does the will of God lives forever. We like to think, I love God, and I love Skittles. And we think that's perfectly fine. I can love both of these things at the same time. I love God and I love Skittles, and we're all good. And I'm absolutely sure, that we love God more than we love Skittles. No questions there. But that's not the way John frames this. John frames it as a continuum. And at one end of the continuum is Skittles, and at the other end of the continuum is God. And what he's essentially saying is the more you love God, the less you love Skittles. And the more you love Skittles, the less you love God. We want to hold in our brains, you can love a whole bunch of stuff at once. And John says, no, in reality, we got the world and we got Jesus. And the further you are this direction, the less you love the world. And the further you are this direction, the less you love Jesus. So one of the suggestions is, I don't exactly know where the line is. I don't know where you've crossed the line into the Skittles love that you shouldn't have. I don't know where that line is. But one thing you and I can do is the more we try to love Jesus, the more we spend our time doing the will of God, the more we spend our time appreciating nature that God created, the more time we spend eating the food that God has created as opposed to all the stuff we've come up with, the more in which we engage with the people of God, serving the people of God, loving and being generous, the more you do that, the less you're going to love the things of this world. So one of the dangers with this passage is just tell me where the line is. I want to make sure I'm just on the other side of the line. And John is saying, just if you keep moving this way, the things of this earth will grow strangely dim. And you won't feel the pull as much. Again, 5 suggestions that we can think about. Maybe we might love things too much. Now, as we close, let me just be honest with you. This is a really tough passage to preach. It's a tough passage to preach because I can't tell you when you love the world too much. I can't even figure out when I love the world too much. It's a tough passage to preach because all these things, Skittles and government and social media and all of this stuff, well, this is something we can use for blessing. It's given to us for our enjoyment. God's really pleased if you eat Skittles and enjoy them. The point of this message is not get rid of all Skittles, don't watch Love is Blind, don't have any social media, never wear fashionable clothes. That's not the point. I'm not saying that. God's not saying that. This passage is not saying that. But what makes this so tricky is how do we know when we've slid into something that's unhealthy? The other tricky thing about it is we often use these things for good. Like we may go play pickleball because we want to share the gospel with other people. Maybe we're on social media because we want to be aware of what's going on in the culture. Maybe we're voting because the Lord's asked us to participate, which I think he has, in what our government's asked us to do in the governing process. And all of these things, we see the good that we're doing with them. And so that makes this especially tricky. And some of you, I know some of you thought this. You're like, those apples are probably genetically modified, so they're probably more like the Skittles than you think they are. I get it. That's what makes this so hard. But I want to be honest with you that at the end of the day, after all the rationalizations, after all the justifications, after all the, I'm using this for good. I need this for school. I got to be able to do this. How am I going to know what's going on in my sports team if I'm not on social media? How am I going to be aware of what's going on in the news if I'm not spending my time watching the news? After all of that, Jesus still says, don't love the world or anything in the world. And as much as we want to pretend he's not saying that to us today, he is. And he's saying it because some of us love this world too much. We love things in this world too much. And we might be the kind of person who, when somebody we love comes to us and says, hey, I don't think you're doing a good job loving me back, we're like, well, I'm doing this, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing this. Does that ever work? No. I think Jesus picked this passage for us today because despite all of our justifications, despite all of our rationalizations, despite all the good things that we can do with the stuff of this world, some of us are still loving this world and the stuff in this world too much. And Jesus is saying, hey, I want less of that in your life. And I want more time. I want more from you. I don't know how to convince you of that. Trust me, I have a hard enough time convincing myself that I might love things in this world too much. So I just want to be honest with you. I think this passage is important. I think it's super easy to just write off. I think it's very easy for all of us just to walk out the doors and be like, yep, don't love the world. Make sure I don't do that. And just get on with the rest of our lives. I was talking to our worship planning group, and I kind of shared my perspective like, well, that seems really not very cheery. But here is my hope. This is the Word of God. This is not just Jesus speaking generically. This is him talking to each one of us individually. And my prayer is, even though it seems like nobody's going to hear this and do anything with it, I'm willing to believe that the Spirit is going to take someone in this room and tell you and tell me, I need you to stop loving the things of this world so much. And that's my prayer and hope this morning.